Shall I just...
Oh, you want to?
I might as well.
Okay, that's fine.
I've got a few slides to show you. Just
Okay,
to
that's fine.
maybe try and address some of the points. I don't think I have heard 4 such passionate talks about what is undoubtedly a real problem. I think the problem actually, certainly from my own perception, is people like me. Because, and I'm unusual because a week or two ago, I'm 60, going to be retired in a year or two's time, so I could be saying, forget it, I don't want to do the work, I'm past it, but I'm still on call, and I do a lot of training, obviously, and we have a hole in our rota. You can't get junior hospital doctors at the moment, at least not in the west of Scotland. And trying to make a manageable rota with junior doctors, given the constraints, there's no way that you can make a complete rota. My personal view is, okay, I will be first on call to a hospital at night team, because that is what I'm paid to do, and if I do it, then I have the opportunity to train that junior person so that they will know what to do the next time. But no, my junior colleagues said, no, we must have somebody to fill the rota, and guess what the answer was? An SAS doctor. And I'm sorry, but I think that's perpetuating the problem, and I better just check that this door is unlocked so that I can make a rapid escape. But I believe that there should only be 2 types of doctor: those on the specialist registers and those who are in preparation and preparing to go on the specialist register. The whole reason that we have people like you is to, I'm sorry to say this, and I do personally feel, having worked there for many years with people in your position, the idea of senior consultants retiring, I see exactly what the problem is. That resonated tremendously for me. The whole problem is people like me, people of my generation, were crapped on as trainees, working 1 in 2, 1 in 3, hundreds of hours per week. And there was a phase, and to be honest, it disappeared about 4 weeks after I became a consultant. I realised I was working harder than I'd ever worked before. But the thing that I looked forward to as a trainee was actually not having to do quite that sort of thing. I realised I was wrong, and I think that attitude has meant that people have been, anybody, give them a title, give them a job, and then it's fine for a year or two, but actually you can't, the fundamental problem is you can't do the job without getting experience. So I do understand your problems. I've just got a few slides that I put together, and they won't necessarily fit with what I would really want to say. It was just simply because Shanita, you gave me sort of a few things to speak about, and I thought that I would try and put a few slides together. And job plan. You asked me to say maybe a little bit about job planning guidance, the SAS Charter and CESR. Well, I mean, job planning, that really is contract between the employer and the employee, and it's not something, to be honest, that the SAC would have a particularly strong view on. It's not to say that it's not an irrelevant process, because obviously it's about developing your own self, using that opportunity for dialogue to try and set your own agenda for personal development. So it is clearly important. It's a negotiation, and I would suggest that anybody going into a job planning meeting should really have a clear agenda. And I think the one problem, as I perceive it, is, and it's because of, I dare say, and I thought your slide about the ages and the 5 different groups was really, a fairly succinct analysis of the problem. But you are, by and large, that little bit older, you're at a different stage in your life. You do want to be, many of you do want to be settled down. The groups, I think it was 2 and 3, the younger ones, they may be in a slightly different position. But if you are in the one place for a long time, then that is going to cause some issues, because one of the problems we'll come on to it in a minute or two, but I wouldn't get a CESR if I were to apply for one right now. And that may seem crazy, but it's a fact. It's the nature of the process. I'm not trying to, my job is to operate the process. I don't set, I did try to get myself onto the current review of the CESR process that is ongoing, but I think they possibly reckoned I was a little bit too close to the current process. So, you know, the bottom line is when you go into job planning, you should have a clear idea of what you want out of it, and, you know, be prepared to do different things so that if you are looking towards a CESR application, that you are going to be doing different things to try and cover all the bases. I also was asked to speak to you a little bit about the SAS Charter. It does, you read it, it sounds a bit like motherhood and apple pie. It's full of very nice, comforting words, but at the end of the day, I'm not really sure, to be honest, where it's going to take you. And I'm sorry if that sounds cynical, but if you've been in the NHS, as some of you clearly have been in, as long as I have, you've seen these documents come and documents go, and perhaps not an awful lot changes. So where does this leave the SAC? Well, as you well know, we're a subcommittee of the Joint Committee of Surgical Training, which is where the 4 surgical colleges of UK and Ireland come together to operate as one body. We're basically quality assured training, and we work with the BOA Training Standards Committee in the development of the curriculum that is the route to entry onto the specialist register. And our main interface, which is what I'm coming on to and which is where I should probably start wearing a bulletproof vest, is obviously in the interfacing with the SAS grades, for want of a better term at the moment, is the CESR review process. And this is legislation. I can't change legislation. 2003 General and Specialist Medical Practice Education, Training and Qualifications Order, as amended in 2007, and basically provides you with these 2 routes: Articles 14.4, which is the standard equivalent to a CCT specialty, or Article 14.5, which is a non-CCT specialty, which actually sounds very attractive, because maybe if I were to apply for a CESR, I should have to apply for it in a non-CCT specialty, because I do mainly lower limb arthroplasty and trauma now, and I have done for 20 odd years. So that's why I wouldn't get a CESR right now, because I have not maintained my competencies in the breadth of the curriculum. But there's a problem with Article 14.5 in that it has to be recognised, whatever you choose to have register under Tribe 14.5 has to be recognised as a specialty somewhere else in the world. You have to have done some training in the field outside the UK, and I'm not really sure that my year in Australia having fun drinking beer would absolutely count as that. And it also has to form a sufficient part of the curriculum to allow it to be assessed against the standards of the curriculum. I got asked a year or so ago, would I accredit somebody in the field of musculoskeletal oncology surgery, which I was told quite clearly was a specialty somewhere in the world. I don't know quite where, but I was prepared to accept that. But there's actually only about 6 lines in the curriculum that relate to it, and therefore it was a non-starter from that particular point of view. But the key question really in relation to the CESR process is the E, the equivalence. And it's the problem, and the thing that I suspect breeds huge resentment amongst you, is that it's equivalent to the UK curriculum, which is by far and away the most rigorous and strict curriculum within the whole of Europe. I have just literally arrived in my email inbox this week, within the past week, 3 European curricula that the Department of Health wished to be reviewed and compared to the GMC approved curriculum. So somebody somewhere is actually looking at this issue. I can't tell you more than that, not because I'm hiding anything, but because I simply don't know. But I've had a pretty hectic last week, 2 days in London, an operating list, a day full of clinics, and and Friday at meetings, and so I haven't really had a chance to pursue them in depth, but I can see where the resentment is, where if you have a Romanian graduate who's come straight out of medical school into a 5-year program as specified by a 19-page curriculum, and of that 5-year program, only 2.5 years is in orthopaedics, and that person can get onto the specialist register in the UK because that's European law, and we can't change that, or at least I can't change that. So I can appreciate a huge amount of resentment in that area, but the UK curriculum is respected worldwide in terms of its quality and depth. It is supported by the CCT guidelines, which you may think I'm personally responsible for. They are there for a good reason, because if you read, and the curriculum is littered with vague it's a high-level document. It's littered with vague statements such as evidence that the program director has scrutinized the e-logbook and is satisfied that it contains a range and number of operations necessary in order to carry out the duties of a modern TNA surgeon. What is that? Basically, the CCT guidelines are like the sentencing guidelines that judges use. It frames the professional judgment that allows that sort of nebulous statement to be translated into something. It is at the end of the day still a professional judgment, and I suspect you'll say I'm B star star D, and I'm hard and I'm mean and so on, but at the end of the day I'm trying to make sure that equivalent really does mean equivalent. One of the other problems, and it's the problem that I alluded to earlier on, is the timeline. The GMC's view is that I passed the FRCS Orth 25 years ago later on this year. I'm actually going to go back and to the Kappa in Dublin, where I sat it 25 years ago, and it was the very first intercollegiate exam. So there aren't many people of my generation who haven't sat the exam, or there will be very few still in practice, because I didn't have to sit it, I did, and I'm proud to say that I got the medal for it as well, but that's irrelevant. That was 25 years ago. I passed it in 1992, it became irrelevant in 1999, because 7 years is what the GMC reckons is the currency of any qualification or experience. Don't attack me for that. That is their view. There are some perhaps difficulties with that. It might, for example, fall foul of gender equality legislation if you've had a lot of maternity leave at various stages. Not that that's going to be a problem for yourself, but
I'm working on it.
So you have to not just gain the competency, but you have to maintain it. And I've mentioned the fact that not all European curricula are the same, and the EFORT curriculum that is being developed is substantially plagiarized from the UK curriculum, but it's also, if I told you it, I think my memory from seeing it last year was about 140 pages. It's a step in the direction. It's not the same thing, and the fundamental difference, and I'm sure David will he might refer to, is the EBOT exam is not the same as the UK exam because it doesn't include a clinical. So I thought I might just say why I think, what are some of the issues and problems with the CESR process, because I know that you all hate it, and obviously some of you are aware of the issues and difficulties with it as much as I am aware of the difficulty and issue. But you shouldn't wake up one morning and expect, I've been in this job for 8 or 9 years, I think I'll apply for a CESR. That won't work. You have to plan well in advance. It's a battle campaign, it's a strategy. You have to think, I would suggest, at least 5 years and possibly longer in advance. And also get advice. Plenty of it out there. There's the JCST guidance. The GMC will provide you with guidance. Regional specialty advisors and training program directors can also help. And I was talking to Mandu earlier on. We are going to try and set up another course and so on. Do start using electronic systems. One of the real problems is we have to assess you against the curriculum. I'm not sure. That's what we're required to do by the law. And the trainees following the curriculum use the e-logbook. If you supply a logbook that's written on the back of 20 fag packets, saying upper limb surgery, lower limb surgery, big toe surgery, it's very, very difficult for somebody to make that sort of a judgment. So use the electronic systems, and let's face it, it is a bit of a game. So think what we want to see. I've seen people supplying 6 years of logbooks consolidated in 12 six-month blocks, and then they expect me to get out my pocket calculator and work out exactly what 6 years of experience is. Sorry, it takes me about 4 hours working on my own to do one of these. I'm not well going to do that. So think what I want to see. Yes, it's a game, play by the rules. And be realistic, be objective. And remember that with trainees, we are looking for triangulated evidence. I had a trainee recently who I thought was quite the most useless trainee that I had had in a very long time. And I said so, and I thought there was plenty of other evidence. I know that there is plenty, because of course I may have my faults, but being wrong isn't one of them. There was other evidence to support it. But at the end of the day, you need at least one or two other things that point to the same fact. So if you have been in the one place for 7 or 8 years, it's one set of people saying, yes, we think you're great, you're a really nice guy, and I wouldn't argue with them, but it's a lot stronger if you've worked in 2 or 3 other places and they've all said the same thing. So be prepared, I would suggest, to move around, because let's face it, that's what the trainees do. And the trainee that I thought was useless is currently, we think he's fine. Obviously I'm a difficult so-and-so, but then you know that. So what are the reasons for failure? Well, I'm sorry, but I do think PEDS is a problem. And I think that I certainly, when I ran a program for 8 years, every single one of my trainees went through a specialist pediatric unit. There is no way that you can cover the breadth of the curriculum, and I'm certainly not aware, although we talk about the difficulties of knowing what happens to SASs. I think I know everything. I don't actually know everything, and but I am certainly unaware of any program that doesn't deliver that sort of training. Spines, I would accept, is a problem. If you look at it across the country, the average number of discectomies done by trainees in 6 years of training is 6. So I don't set a particularly high bar there when I'm reviewing, but if you look at most trainees' logbooks, yes, they will have done some spines. And I suspect an increasing problem, and something that will be a challenge for the SAS grade over the next few years, will be exposure to major trauma. Because a lot of the place hospitals that you work in are not major trauma centres, and we're increasingly expecting to see trainees providing evidence that they have the competencies to require work in a trainee team. So it's about the breadth of it's not just about the breadth of specialties though, it is about the breadth within the specialties. If you've done 250 carpal tunnel decompressions and never seen a trapeziectomy, or never released a trigger finger, or never seen a wrist arthrodesis, it doesn't make you a hand surgeon. So yes, you're bloody good at carpal tunnel decompression, at least I hope you would be, but it's not the same as making you a hand surgeon. And unfortunately, the nature of an awful lot of SAS jobs is that you will end up, you're more likely to have done the 250 carpal tunnel decompressions, and the trainees are the ones that have creamed off, because they're the ones that are doing that. It is the program director's responsibility, and it's the ARCP panel's responsibility to make sure that they follow the curriculum. So it's not just about numbers, it is a professional judgment, and we talked about being gained and maintained, and that is a frequent problem. You know, and if you have, and that's where a huge amount of professional judgment comes in. If you did a vast amount of spinal surgery 15 years ago, and you've only done one discectomy since, you know, my professional judgment would be that no, you haven't maintained the competencies. If you had done, you know, maybe half a dozen and had a few other bits to support it, I might say yes, but it is a professional judgment. There is no right or wrong answer. Research, some very good research done by staff grade and associate specialists, but again, not every unit that is well supported by doctors at your grade is populated by people who provide that sort of opportunity. So it can be difficult, and please, you know, we have this problem with trainees who pay to get publications in internet-based journals. You're wasting your money. They get knocked off, but they get chastised by the ARCP panels and so on. And I think a lot of the audits that I see are not done to a clear standard, or there's no loop closure, which again is something that is an issue. So, and I hope I have conveyed the impression that I do understand your problems, but I hope you also get the impression that I am a human being, I am doing a job, I'm trying to maintain the standards, I am not being a nasty person, although you may well choose to do it. And just a slide that Megan Wilson gave us to show that actually we're relatively a small part of the wheel, where the red circle is the JCST and the SACs and so on. And that just outlines the process. And just to tell you a little bit about what we do, because I'm absolutely determined to make it fair and transparent. Mark Goodwin, my predecessor, and I revolutionised the process for delivering the CESR process about 2 years ago. We now achieve the GMC timescales for this, or we have done for the last 6 months, 100%. We get a regular performance review, and we've achieved the target 100% of the time for the last 6 months. And that's because we now sit down in teams of between 2 and 4 people in one place. We're supported by the JCST Secretariat. Mark and I developed some standardized paperwork so that the review is carried out in a very structured and standardized manner. And it is a team judgment at the end of the day. Hawks like me get moderated out. Oh, come on, you're being a bit hard on that. That really is. So it's not so that it is a profession. It isn't just one person making the things. And it also means that there are no gaps, because if somebody misses the fact that, well, actually, no, you really haven't done an awful lot of that, and we don't put it in the first report, you've got it. You've gone through, we can't go back and say, well, actually, we made a mistake there. We can't do that. And actually doing it that way has made it a vastly quicker process. And at the end of the day, I am prepared to put my hand on my heart and say that it is a fair and rigorous process, but the difficulty that you have is that it is in establishing equivalence to the UK curriculum, which is one of the most structured and comprehensive orthopaedic curricula in the world. Finally, just a word of advice as to what you should do if you fail. And unfortunately, I can't remember the exact percentage, a very high percentage will fail, at least on the first time. Take advice and read the recommendations carefully, and then put it away in a drawer and go and do whatever it takes to cool off. Do not respond or do something while you are, as you will inevitably, given the huge amount of work that you've done, you will be angry. So cool off and then repeat read the advice again. And then you ask yourself the question, is it a failure to gain or is it a failure to maintain? And I would suggest to you that it is generally easier, I take it you all know what the abbreviation JFDI means, just do it. I wasn't wanting to swear in this august audience, because arguing is stressful, it's more work for you, sometimes in going to courts and so on, and it's certainly more work for us. And if you, certainly one SAS doctor who worked in the unit that I work in the west of Scotland for a number of years, I gave him slightly arm's length advice, and I had nothing to do with the evaluation, so I didn't give it the full depth of consideration that I would. And he put his submission in, and he got knocked back, and I looked at what he'd got knocked back on, and I have to say, yes, actually, I think he was right. And he was mad as a snake, seriously hurt and angry. And I said to him, look, I said, you know what, he's no longer working with us. I said, you have a route to sort this in 9 months. You can argue it if you want, but if you just take that route, you will have done the extra hand cases, you will have done the extra audit, you can do a management course next week if you want, and you can get some more trauma surgery at the same time. It will take you 6 or 9 months, and then you'll have ticked all the boxes, and that's it, sorted. But of course, you can go down the review if you feel you've got more evidence, and of course, as we all know, with the courts, there's the course of appeals and so on. So I hope that's given you an understanding of me and where I come from. Schroeder's given me a very sceptical look here. I suspect I haven't totally convinced him that I'm a nice guy. Thank you all very much for your attention. David.
Thank you very much for that. Let me introduce myself. I'm Amit Kocher. I am the chair of the BMA SAS committee nationally. And that is one of the most realistic and practical presentations I have seen in a long, long time. You've outlined the difficulties so beautifully, and what we need to do, as what I've tried to do, is find solutions to those difficulties. And I'll try and just elaborate in 1 or 2 sentences more. Why? I mean, I've got a presentation on the charter and why we did the charter. The charter was partly my brainchild, and NHS employers helped me with it. The first thing that I'd like to talk about was, you said that there should be 2 types of doctors, trainees and trained.
I thought I'd get shot for that, or maybe you're just saving your fire. But
No, I'm happy you said
we love it. And the BMA agrees with that logic. However, whether we get a trained doctor contract is a big, big question mark. Where are we? And do you know, honestly, we're producing 8,000 doctors a year, 7,900. There's not enough training posts. When I took up this job of being the national chair, I thought it was a breed, as somebody put, that's going to expire. But no, we're expanding. That's because we've got so much of the local doctor having to take the SAS grade. Nobody wants to be a GP anymore for some reason. And that's what's happening in the hospital. So what we need from people like yourself in positions that can help make CESR a reality is small obstacles. For example, a lot of colleges don't allow us access to a logbook. So a logbook that you accept as part of your JCST, we don't have even access to it. So it's something I'm working on, but if the more the people that say, hang on, but the last time I heard this was a problem. Can we give them access to an e-logbook? It would be wonderful.
Well, as the clinical lead for the e-logbook for the Edinburgh College, anybody can access that.
Excellent.
Medical students.
Excellent. Well, I mean,
you know, if there's-
my college does, well, the ENT group doesn't. And so the CESR process you spoke about, that's changing as well. And there's legislation that's supposed to go through next year that says that the exam is going to be mandatory. And you need to have done 12 months in this country. So the non-CCT one is going to be questioned. And the third thing is that there will be a workplace-based assessment. So they will have to come out to you. That's what I have seen. That is Lord Patel's recommendation for the new CESR. But again, to access that CESR, I mean, I'm an ENT surgeon, and I go up and down the country talking to SAS doctors and find out their problems. The largest problems, believe you me, in the workplace come from orthopedics. Honest to God, I have seen so many orthopedics SAS doctors complaining. The reason they will never get CESR is because they'll never be able to rotate, because they'll never be able to, because they are the service provision doctors.
doing the jobs that some of my colleagues don't like to do. The first thing when our rota gets published is they all look and see who am I on with the next weekend I'm on call. If it's the SAS doctor, then you can arrange to go out and be on the golf course.
You are so correct.
Whereas if it's the ST1, well, to be honest, I actually like being on the ST1, but then I'm peculiar because there's nothing gives me greater pleasure than actually seeing somebody at ST1 progress to being independent in an operation. But that's why I do what I do.
But that's why we need more voices that will add to our voice to say, hang on, if this doctor is safe after 5 p.m. in the evening, why is he not safe to do a theatre session on his own? And that is a big question that everybody asks. He can do, I don't know what you do at DHS, or I don't know what you do, and I can do a mastoid at night, or I can stop a tonsil bleeding at night, but in the daytime, in the morning session, no, that has to be reserved for somebody else. These are a few practical issues, but we need people like yourself saying, look guys, we need to give them a better deal. We need to listen to their small demands. It's not a big thing. And I think soon you're going to see, I mean, I don't know if the new consultant contract will go through. If it goes through, it might be a different deal, but if it doesn't, soon you'll see about 60,000 SAS doctors. The title is not going to change. And if anybody uses NCCG, I'll personally shoot them. Because it is derogatory, NHS employers have put it out as a communique that it is, you're not a known anything. A cricketer cannot be called known footballer. He's called cricket, isn't he? So, thank you very much for that, but we need your voice in orthopedics as much as we need our voices to be heard. Please speak up for us.